The purpose of this presentation is the AAT Translation project that we currently conduct at SARI. I do not want to go deep in the theory, but only to give a rapid overview about what I am speaking about. It's about controlled vocabularies. And here I have a definition from the publication Introduction to Vocabularies by Patricia Harpring. A controlled vocabulary is an organized arrangement of words and phrases used to index content and or to retrieve content through browsing or searching. It typically includes preferred and variant terms and has a defined scope or describes a specific domain. What is important here is that it is not a free language, but it is controlled. It's controlled because only terms from the list may be used when working with vocabulary. If it is used by more than one person, there is a control over who may add terms to the list and how they may do it. And the list may grow, but only under defined policies. The objective of a controlled vocabulary is to ensure consistency. And it's a help for the people who index the objects. It could be books, artworks, or archives. And it can also be a help when browsing or searching in an information system. There are different types of controlled vocabularies. Classifications structure subjects in classes. These classes are organized hierarchically. The classes are generally represented by linguistic signs or symbols. In the libraries, the documents are often stored in the shelves by classification. The subject heading lists are lists of terms. They are generally arranged in alphabetic order. They contain cross-references between the preferred, the non-preferred, and other related headings. And the third type are the Thesauri. Thesauri are structured vocabularies in which the concepts are represented by terms. And the concepts and the terms are organized between them by explicit relationships. For each concept, there is a preferred term and a synonym. And the scope notes, this means a short description of the concept completes the entry. What is the situation in Switzerland? In general, we see that there is a lot of vocabularies used in heritage, cultural, and research institutions. This was also confirmed by a survey conducted 2018 by SARI. We wanted to have an overview of the use of authority files in museums, libraries, research centers, and archives. And what concerns the names of persons, corporate bodies, or localization, then controlled vocabularies of national and international importance are often used. But about the subject indexing, 75% of the respondents say that they use in-house authority files, 14% say that they use G&D, and 40% say that they use AAT. The scope of this survey concerned only institutions in the domain of art history and related disciplines. But another external survey conducted 2019 by the Bern University of Applied Sciences by public administrations shows furthermore that only few vocabularies and base registers are available in linked open data. The consequences of that is that there exist only few museum meta-catalogs or catalogs present in different kinds of collections in Switzerland. And when they exist, there is no uniform keyword indexing. When I make a search with a term in German and then the same search with the equivalent term in French, I have not the same results. And for the museum professionals, in terms of management, each institution needs to create its authority files, and this takes a lot of time. In the survey we made, the respondents were aware of the situation and mentioned that their data were not interoperable. This lack of homogeneity in the use of controlled vocabularies is probably explained by two factors. The first is the multilinguality in Switzerland. It is not so often that institutions are really working in two or more languages. In the majority of the time, they are working in the language of the linguistic region they are established. The institutions work, therefore, with the vocabularies which best match to their needs. The second is the limited access to the data. Because they are not published in an open way, they are not really reused by others. Internationally, there exists one thesaurus specialized in art and architecture. It is AAT. The work on the AAT began in the late 70s. The need first came from the art libraries and art journal indexing services. They were beginning to automate their cataloging and indexing procedures. Some of these institutions were using the Library of Congress subject heading, but it did not cover all the needs in the field of art and architecture. And the new specific thesaurus was then created in response. It's the AAT. The thesaurus is now more used in the context of museums. AAT is one of the 5 vocabularies developed and maintained by the vocabulary program of the Getty Research Institute. Each of these vocabularies are covering a specific scope. The ULAN contains names of artists, teaching and locations. CONA contains names of artworks. EA is for the iconographic description, and AAT concerns the subject indexing and contains not only object types, but also materials, techniques, or style and periods in example. Some features of AAT. It is based on the principle of collaborative work. Everybody can contribute to the content and propose new concepts. The editorial team of the vocabulary program by Getty will accept it and integrate it in the thesaurus or not. Therefore, it is multilingual, and since 2014, available also in linked open data. Here you can see an example of concept at the AAT. The AAT contains today around 56,000 concepts, and they are organized in 7 facets. In the last years, several research institutions or museums conducted important translation projects. You can see here the most represented languages. Almost the entire thesaurus has already been translated in Dutch by the Netherlands Institute for Art History, RKD. And then the Centro de Documentación de Bienes Patrimoniales in Chile translated 30,000 concepts. The Academia Sinica of Taiwan translated 22,000 concepts in Chinese. And there exist also French and German translations. For French, it is in majority the Canadian Heritage Information Network who contributed with translations, and the Institut für Museumsforschung at the Staatlichen Museum zu Berlin Preußischer Kulturbesitz contributed for the terms in German. SARI was inspired by all these projects and began also its own translation project. SARI is the acronym for Swiss Art Research Infrastructure, and it is part of the roadmap of research infrastructures of national relevance of the State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation. It is being hosted by the University of Zurich and operated in cooperation with the ETH Zurich and the Swiss Institute for Art Research, SIC-ISEA. The mission is to provide unified and mutual access to domain-specific research data, collection data, images, and related reference data in the field of art history, architecture, and other disciplines related to the visual studies. Currently, we are building an environment based on the technologies of the semantic web, and it should also integrate controlled vocabularies as AAT. And as I said before, it is only covered in minimum with French and German translation. This is why SARI began this translation project in 2018. What are the objectives? It's to give access to the translations through a specific infrastructure. We are not doing the translations by ourselves, but we are organizing and coordinating the translations for Switzerland. We are also an official contributor for the Getty vocabularies. And we want to give the opportunity to everybody to contribute to the translations. It is probably unrealistic to translate all the 56,000 concepts in the next years. Then we want to work hand in hand with the museums and the research institutions and to translate in priority the concepts they need. We want to make transversal translations rather than hierarchical. This means by facets. It's not the idea that we choose now a facet and we translate it in the 3 languages, but if, for example, we have the concept civil engineering, then we will also in the same way translate the concept civil engineer. And in priority, we want to align existing controlled vocabularies. In order to support the translation tasks, we built a specific platform, which is AAT.swissartresearch.net. This platform is based on the native semantic data of AAT, and we integrated in this platform all the concepts and the translations from the Getty. The translation is a complex process. It does not simply consist of translating a list of words from English to another language. In order to ensure the quality of the work, several people are involved. Of course, the translator at the beginning has the bigger part of the work because he has also to complete the terms with sources, but then other people validate what was done by the translator. In our case, we are not working on translations from English only to one other language, but we have to manage the translations in French, German, Italian, and maybe Romansh. And one person is not necessarily able to make the translation in all these languages. This is why we had to find technically a way that enabled different people to work on the same concept, but independently. Then we splitted the concepts in so-called translation containers. I can show you this process more in details with a scheme. Here you can see the translation process scheme. On the upper line, you see the different tasks and then the roles involved in each of these tasks. First, the administrator is searching for a concept and then assigning translation container to the translator. The translator is then filling in the whole form that I will show you later with the different sources. When the work is done, then he gives the translator container to the administrator. The administrator is controlling the quality of the work. If it's okay, then the translation container is going to the editor for the content quality, and if not, it's going back to the translator. And then it's following like this, step by step, until it is published in the platform, first swissartresearch.net, and then to the modern AAT Thesaurus. I made some screenshots from our translation platform. In this case, it concerns the translation container in French for the concept stencils. The work of the translator is to mention all the translations for this concept. And he has to define which term is the descriptor, which term is the alternate descriptor, and which terms are the used form for terms. In this case of stencils, the most common translation would be pochoir. What I want to show through this example is that in order to ensure the quality of the translation, you have always to mention the sources in which you found each term. And then the platform and the AAT Thesaurus in general perfectly fits the needs of Swiss museums and institutions in terms of Helvetism. For the example of stencils, the word used commonly in Switzerland is not necessarily pochoir, but chablon. And you can mention it with a code. In this case, it would be FRCH for French from Switzerland. There are also a lot of examples for German. In this case, you have not only other words, but also other spellings of a word. For example, with the SZ. Here you have another example of term, and at least the scope note and the translation of this scope note. In our platform, we worked on basis of the AAT data of the Getty. But in order to integrate this in our environment, we did also a mapping with other ontologies, as in example, CIDOC CRM and Ontolex Lexinfo. You can see the different mappings on the schemes. In our languages, it is quite important to be able to distinguish if a term is masculine, feminine, or neutral. This is why we introduced also the Lexinfo properties, number, and gender in the model. Currently, several translations are ongoing. For these translations, we follow different approaches. In the first case, it is SARI who chooses the concepts to be translated. We have two ongoing projects. First, we translated a list of 150 occupations for another internal project to SARI. Then we have concepts on the topic of photography. It is an important domain because there are several institutions specialized in this topic in Switzerland, and almost all the museums or research institutions are confronted to photography as a support in their archives. Then we knew that quite a lot of concepts are already available in Italian in this topic. They were translated by colleagues from the Biblioteca dell'Accademia di Architettura from Mendrisio. The idea was to have a topic translated entirely in 3 languages, French, Italian, German. In this case, SARI mandates domain specialists for the translation and assumes the role of administrator and ensures the quality control until the publication in the mother AAT. In the second case, it is external institutions who want to align the in-house lists of terms with AAT, as for example in the case of electronic arts by CIDOC. Then SARI provides the infrastructures. This means the translation platform and takes care of the quality control until the publication to the mother AAT. SARI made also a handbook to help the translators and gives also advices about the work. The third case is not really ongoing, but in discussion. The translation would begin with an alignment between a classification and AAT. The idea is first to make an equivalency work between each class of the Trackler systematic and the AAT concepts. This classification is used in a lot of Swiss museums. Once the alignment is established, we would translate the concept in 3 languages. The idea is then that if a museum professional is looking for a class in the Traxler systematic, he can also directly integrate the AAT concepts in his object data entry. And the fourth scenario is simply that the platform could also be used by other external translation instances, which are also official Getty contributors. The instance then works totally independently. SARI simply provides the infrastructure and transmits data to the mother thesaurus at the end. This has the advantage that the translations are done in only one platform and that all the ongoing translations are visible. In conclusion, I would say that AAT can perfectly be implemented in the Swiss context, as it was already in other countries. And it can fit the needs of the Swiss heritage, cultural, and research institutions. As we saw, the thesaurus is more than multilingual. It also accepts Swiss terms. Second, it is available in linked open data. And third, the translations can be done in a collaborative way to follow the vision of the Getty. The whole translations should not be done at once and assumed only by one institution, but the work can be split into many institutions following the competencies and the needs. We see that even more institutions in Switzerland are publishing their data in linked open data, and often the data are structured with the CIDOC CRM model. This is very good because through this way, we modeled also the data in CIDOC CRM, and the access to the reference data services of SARI and especially AAT is more easy. And we would like to foster a pragmatic step-by-step approach. To ensure the interoperability of the data, we would recommend to use from now the AAT as a tool for the subject indexing. The data are available from the Getty page or from the SARI translation platform, and they can be integrated in the different collection platforms of the museums. And the missing translations can be done later, according to the needs. Do not hesitate to ask your questions now or to contact us later. Thank you.